Tampa Bay is like no place else.
Wait, you can't recycle the bag? You have to throw it away.
Proper recycling keeps it that way for everyone. Bags tangle in machinery and can bring sorting efforts to a halt.
No bags.
Trash the bags and keep our recycling program moving forward.
No, Mom, look. No plastic bags.
Do your part to keep our recycling bag-free. Trash the tanglers or return them to participating retailers. For more information, visit tampabayrecycles.org.
Don't let mosquitoes ruin your day. Fight the bite by removing standing water on your property. Standing water of any kind is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Do your part and help reduce the mosquito population.
Visit hcfl.gov/fightthebite.
These are the jobs you may not see every day, but just know we're working hard to make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play. Subscribe to our YouTube page for more great county-related videos, only on HTV.
Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the December 9th, 2024 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for the local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I would like to ask Commissioner Sieben to lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Would all please rise?
Heavenly Father, we come before you today with praise for your mighty power and guidance. We thank you for this day, and thank you too for the many blessings in our lives, for our great country, and for the opportunity to live in freedom. We ask your blessings on our leaders, and we ask that you give each one of us here today the wisdom to make the right choices so that our decisions will be in the best interest of the people of Hillsborough County. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And with that, I'd like to ask the clerk to please go ahead and call roll.
Bowden,
Here.
Beza, Cardenas, Kona,
Here.
Fernandez,
Here.
Kress, Lauk,
Here.
Saria,
Here.
Sieben, Orton, Rodriguez, Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. All right. Our first item of business is public input. No one signed up for the public input, so we'll go to presentations. And our first presentation is 3A, the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, THEA, creating a transportation system for Tampa's growing and changing communities. And the presenter is Mr. Greg Slater.
Good afternoon. It's not me. Nope. It was stuck. There we go. There we go. Thank you, and thank you to the Commission for having me. You know, it was how I ended up on the agenda. I gave a similar presentation to the TPO board, and Commissioner Joseph noted that it would be really good to have this in front of the Planning Commission. So I wanted to come and share a little bit about what we're doing at THEA and some of the different things that we're getting into. You know, people think of us as just the expressway, but we touch a lot of different areas, and we wanted to touch on a little bit of that today. So first, we just finished up our strategic plan. We have a new strategic plan in place now. We've had billion worth of work to do over the next 10 to 15 years. So the expressway is kind of getting to that age where you have to kind of make those reinvestments. And so we have a number of projects coming that you're going to see on the expressway. But I'm going to talk a lot today about some of the things that we're doing around the expressway. You know, if you think about where we are as an urban expressway, our entire playing field downtown has changed. The infrastructure that was put in place years ago, it's not the same community, it's not the same city. So, you know, we think about our downtown core in particular as a real challenge for us as we really rethink where our exit ramps are, where our entrance ramps are, those types of things, because ultimately we now have to transition from an expressway into a dense urban environment, change the whole function of that transportation system over the course of that ramp. So we're really doing a lot of work today to really try and slow the traffic down at the top of the ramp so it knows it's entering a different type of an environment. We're using technology, but also some engineering solutions, but also rethinking where those ramps are. Are they in the right place today? You know, so, you know, as we rebuild the expressway, as we redevelop the expressway, we wanted to really build on our wins, right? So taking a little bit of each. You know, the last big project that we did was the Selma West extension over Gandy Boulevard. You know, conceivably a really successful project from a transportation perspective. It took 50% of the traffic off of the roadway below, eliminated almost 40% of the crashes because they were all really congestion-related type incidents, and really created an outlet for that regional travel to get across into Pinellas County. You know, we use our dog park as an example of really the first piece that we did in terms of community development, public spaces, and it's been a real success for us. And we're going to do more and more of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, our connected vehicle pilot. If you're not familiar with us, we were one of 3 designated sites by US DOT to test connected and autonomous vehicle technology. We're still doing that today. We routinely will shut down our reversible express lane, test some technology, but also have a really deep engagement with a lot of the auto manufacturers and technology providers. So we are continuing that project. Right now, we are working with FDOT to build our infrastructure, connect it to the I-4 infrastructure. So when we're finished with FDOT, you'll have the expressway Tampa all the way to Orlando fully equipped with connected vehicle infrastructure, being able to aid in some of that freight movement and some of that travel that goes up and down the I-4 corridor. You know, we have a lot of projects. The first one that you will see over the next couple of probably 6 to 8 months is the South Selma Capacity Project. So that's a project that's going to do a few different things. One, it's going to add a lane in each direction, really from the Hillsborough River Bridge all the way down to Gandy Boulevard, dealing with some of that demand that we're seeing. It's going to fix a lot of the merge areas. So one of the issues that we have on the expressway today is when it was built, the standards were different, the vehicles were different, and so we have a lot of ramps that have these really short areas to merge into traffic. So we're going to elongate those. We're going to replace several of the bridge decks, and so getting them up to today's standards, adding some more shoulders. But we're also going to redevelop all the underpasses. There are 14 underpasses in South Tampa, so really making sure that we're providing a really good pedestrian infrastructure, connecting those communities on either side of that. And then we have a large portion over by Beta Bay where we're going to build another dog park and some more community spaces in that underpass. We have a lot of pedestrian traffic in South Tampa, a lot of kids in the morning kind of walking to school. So we want to make sure we're providing that pedestrian infrastructure and a good path for them to get through to those neighborhoods. The downtown viaduct and the ramps. So that's just really looking at that whole section, 22nd Street to Hillsborough Bridge, to really rethink that infrastructure as we improve. But how do we use that piece of the expressway to kind of manage the rest of it? But also, are those ramps in the right place? We've got a couple of ramps that we're trying to put some technology on. So the first piece you'll see is the one that comes down on Morgan, which is that ramp right in downtown, somewhat close to Amalie Arena. But we're going to put some pedestrian detection on the crosswalks downtown, and then there'll be signs at the top of the ramp. So if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk, there's going to be a sign at the top of the ramp that lights up. So before you can even get to the end of that ramp, and before you see that pedestrian, we're going to alert you to slow down. You're entering an urban environment and you have pedestrians present. So trying to enhance some of the safety downtown. Our 301 extension is one that's just starting the planning process now. We did some community workshops last week, very, very well attended, starting to get some feedback on that project. And that's just looking at the possibility possibility of expanding the expressway down the median of 301 into that Riverview, Big Bend, Apollo Beach area to try and alleviate some of the congestion down there and manage some of the growth. We're working really closely with the county on that one as well. The county is looking at some possibilities and redeveloping some of those old strip mall type sites down there. So we're trying to find some partnerships there. And then we have our greenway work, which I'm going to get into a little bit. I didn't touch on whiting. That's probably right going to come out at the heels of South Selman. What that's going to do is that if you have ramp 6A and 6B downtown by Amalie Arena, that ramp that kind of spurs off Tampa PD, shuts off 6A when there's a hockey game just because it's just not a safe movement. We're going to take that out. And then we're going to keep that loop ramp there so you'll be able to go around to Florida. But then we're going to add a new ramp that is going to land right by the Amalie Arena parking garage. And so kind of an area of the city that doesn't have a whole lot going on, kind of over by that parking garage. The backups that you see on the expressway today coming into town in the evening, we're starting to see those with the growth. It's kind of a good problem to have. We have a lot more going on downtown, so you have a lot of traffic. This new ramp will deal with 100% of the traffic for special events and game day, so it will alleviate that backup. If you look at our capacity South Selman project, this is a concept of what you're going to see. The lower left-hand corner is a picture of really what you're going to start to see on all of our underpasses: pedestrian infrastructure, pedestrian lighting, good crosswalks, those types of things, really trying to make that part of the neighborhood a little bit more and keep some focus on maintaining those. The concept you see in the middle is the layout for the dog parks and the recreational spaces that we're going to put in Bay to Bay once the construction of South Selman is done. So another dog park in the shade under the expressway, so you'll be able to see a lot of that space getting utilized and really, really functional for the community. And it's really not only developing community space, but a little bit of a thank you for the community, because we're probably going to have to store some construction equipment there for a year or so during construction, but go in there and redevelop that space. And then really all 14 of these underpasses are going to get redeveloped, not with parks and those types of things. There's not a lot of room, but every single one of these underpasses, when we're done, will have good sidewalk infrastructure, connectivity to the pedestrian amenities on either side. A little bit of work around our greenway. We just finished this about 6 or 8 months ago, where we went through and we looked at the different zones along our Leroy Selman Greenway. We started to do some wayfinding out there, starting to put some pavement markings down there. You're going to start to see those. But we really wanted to go out and figure out what would it look like when we're done. So, what we did was we went through and laid out a series of hubs and nodes and plazas to really lay out the greenway, create community spaces. We've got a great 12th Street Park concept that we're really pursuing right now with some federal grants and some partnership opportunities where we can redevelop really that whole area back by Ybor Harbor that's coming in, really connecting that Ybor Harbor over to Gasworks development, working closely with the development community so that when people are not going to be able to tell who's doing what, right? So what we don't want to do is have this great development in Ybor Harbor, this great development over in Gasworks, and then just have kind of a dirty underpass in between. So, we want to create some community spaces with that in partnership with everyone around us. So just kind of an idea, this is Zone 1. This is Fry Park. This also includes a connection from the Riverwalk to the Selman Greenway. So this will be able to help us with that connection through the network. Fry Park is over, this is the Hillsborough River Bridge, so really kind of coming through there. There's some utility infrastructure we're trying to get through, but really kind of creating more open spaces. We're working with USF to get an understanding of public art and those types of things that we could put in there. Really functional space, community spaces, a lot of pedestrian lighting, a lot of features, bike racks, those types of things. You get into the pedestrian passage over the Central Promenade. This is over towards Camels a little bit more. We've got some outdoor recreation spaces, but we also have some areas where you can have like outdoor community meetings and those types of things. So trying to create amphitheater type seating and those types of things to really make that space really usable. This is back by the Greenway, back on the back side there, Site 3, over by Embark Collective and a lot of those areas. We wanted to create, we met with them and said, what kind of things do you want to see around there? And one of the things they said is, sometimes we just like to get out and walk and think a little bit. So, landscaping, calming type features, but also things that make a little noise, a little bit of white noise kind of thing, and just create a space for them, but also use it as an opportunity to kind of educate and look at some of the natural vegetation around there. This is the backside 12th Street Park over by, so if you dog park to 12th Street, really long straight bridge spans where you can do a lot with. So we just finished cleaning a lot of that area up. First part of Gasworks is starting to open up. They've got a gym on the back there now. Fort Greenfields is back there. So this will probably be the first project that we do. We've got some pickleball courts and some recreational areas, all in the shade under the expressway, really high part of the expressway there. So we're excited about doing some of those. And that also includes reimagining the stormwater management pond that we have there and creating more of a kind of an aesthetic feature where we can make it more part of a community space as opposed to just a pond. And then Zone 5 is that Ybor Harbor area, what we're thinking about as you come across, as Ybor Harbor starts to develop, those big spaces that go through. We also think there's an opportunity for some transportation hubs and those types of things in those areas as well with shared mobility and just trying to create some connectivity between the downtown area and Channel Side and Ybor Harbor and Gasworks and all of that, utilizing that space for the Greenway. Touching a little bit on our connected vehicle pilot, we're really leaning a lot of our energy into V2X technology today, which is really vehicle to everything, being able to create some technological solutions to help with some of the pedestrian safety challenges, vehicle to bikes, vehicle to infrastructure, those types of things. Those signs will be the first thing you see there. And then looking at kind of end of ramp deceleration, trying to slow some of that traffic down. When we first started our CV pilot, we had some assumptions on the auto manufacturing technology kind of moving a little bit faster than it did, but when it didn't move, what we did was we basically said, okay, we're going to focus on providing the people that are driving on our system or the people that are walking and traveling around our system with the most amount of information that we can to be able to make those safe decisions. And so that's where we're focused today. We have a wrong-way driving project. We had a very tragic wrong-way driving fatality over the weekend. Someone that had gotten on and was going the wrong way all the way from like Brandon area and had a fatal crash downtown. We're implementing some of this technology on all of our ramps today. So it's actually in the construction phase now. So you'll start to see these 3-phase type alert systems that will eventually alert the traffic management center downtown to be able to give us a little bit of a notification when somebody enters that. So kind of going through that technology, going through those sensors, it'll tell you, hey, you just got on the wrong way. Telling them, but also telling us and telling the traffic management center. So you don't have to call the police and say, hey, we just encountered a wrong way driver. It's a challenge all across Florida. And we're seeing it in a lot of different areas. There are a lot of theories for why we have that, but certainly trying to create some solutions for that detection. Our real estate, many of you may or may not know, but we own about 11 acres of property downtown where the old flour mill used to be. And so it happens to be a really centrally located piece of property. So we hired a firm, Ernst & Young, to come in and do an assessment of that property, create some opportunities for us. We currently have an RFI on the street today with the development community. We can't be a developer, but we can bring in some partners to help imagine what we can do there. The board was really adamant about, they think that we want to find a solution that really adds a lot of value to the community, but also creates some connectivity between Channel Side and downtown and Ybor and all of those. It's such a centrally located piece of property, really right next to Water Street, to be able to provide some value to the community. So we're excited about what that's going to do for us. And then finally, I'll touch on our strategic plan. We just went through a process, redid our strategic plan, really reimagined for the next 10 to 15 years and really trying to think about different ways that we can serve this community, investing our resources. So we invest 100% of the toll dollars that come off the expressway back into the community. And really trying to use data to help guide those decisions, but also think about that next generation transportation system and what we can add to that. But it's really a focus on where Tampa is going and not where Tampa has been. We were very strategic about not thinking that the infrastructure that we built 50 years ago is the same infrastructure that we need tomorrow. So we're really trying to think about that forward-thinking piece. And then some change in our philosophy. You know, the last 60 years where we've been, we're focused on where we're headed now, because we've got to start laying that foundation. You know, previously we just had been focused on the expressway. Now we are focused on that door-to-door trip. We care about where people are coming from and where they're going, and we can make our part of that journey the best it can be. But we're also focused under the expressway and around the expressway and connecting to the local roads, and how we're building not only infrastructure for our toll customers, but infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists and scooters that are around the expressway in that urban environment. You know, moving from a transaction focus to a customer focus, the people that we serve, and then really going from an organization that has served this community for many years to one that is integrated into this community and really out in the community a lot. So we are currently rebuilding and planning for the next 100 years. So with that, I'll take a pause and see if there are any questions, and thank you for having me.
All right,
Can
thank
you
you.
state your name for the record?
Sure, I'm sorry. My name is Gregory Slater. I'm the Executive Director of the Tampa Hillsborough County Expressway Authority.
All right, any questions, or Commissioner Kress?
You know, I've said this many times, but thank you for your emphasis on what's around and below and what happens in downtown. It's been an amazing partnership. Regarding all the improvements along the Salmon Greenway, will Thea take on all of the kind of the maintenance and management of those? Are you partnering with the City Parks Department? Or?
It's a combination. So we'll likely take on a lot of the maintenance because we want it to be maintained at a certain level and make that investment. And I get that's more of a it's a tough investment for some of those on the city park side. We are partnering with the city in terms of operations and those types of things, because that helps us on the insurance side. Like we can maintain hardscape and those types of things. We just can't operate it. It's just a different insurance piece. So if those pieces get taken into the city system, then they can kind of handle that. But we're still talking about how to best manage that. But from a maintenance perspective, like for instance, the dog park today, we've kind of taken back some of that maintenance, and we're starting to redo that now ourselves. But yes, we are accounting for the maintenance side of that.
All right, Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a curiosity question. Sure. I didn't even know you guys own the old flower plant, but was there a reason why they took out all the rail lines on that one side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when Meridian Avenue, I'm going to go based on some history because it was before I got here, but when Meridian Avenue was expanded, they moved those railroad tracks, and when those railroad tracks were moved, we acquired that property, a portion of that property, and actually Ardent Mills kind of paid us rent for the last couple of years that they were there. The railroad, when Ardent Mills moved to the new location, CSX basically declared it kind of a dead track. And so when the track is there, you have to follow certain insurance guidelines as well as maintain it, but when it's not being used, then they just want to get rid of it. And so we had to remove, like all of it when it was in the pavement, it was kind of creating some challenges too. But we did go in there and kind of clean it up. It had some ugly stuff in the dirt, and we go in there and clean that up.
Thank you.
All right, I did have one question. I heard you talk about this time around. I didn't catch it when we were in the TPO board meeting, but you talked about the I-4 connection and the vehicle to infrastructure, and FDOT kind of working with you all on that. And I'm wondering, you all have been really ahead of that vehicle to infrastructure and just collection of data and using data in general. I'm wondering, because you kind of mentioned logistics, is the focus really logistics more, or is it, personal vehicle travel? What do you think when it comes to vehicle infrastructure?
I think the more data that we can get, and it's all anonymized, but the more data that we can get, the better of a viewpoint. So we can get that 360-degree view of how the roadway is being used. But also, as the technology advances on the auto manufacturing side for things like vehicle-to-vehicle connections and vehicle-to-infrastructure connections, we'll have the framework and the foundation there to be able to take advantage of it right away. You're going to start to see a lot of that evolve over the next probably 10 years. But cars that are being bought today are still going to be in use 10 years from now. So you're going to have this period of kind of mixed technology. My personal opinion is we're going to get to a point on the system we're going to have dedicated lane or 2 dedicated lanes to the fully autonomous vehicles, likely transit vehicles as well, using that infrastructure. So we just want to be ready to be able to use it as soon as it's ready.
All right. Yeah, Ms. Ornino.
Thanks. I just wanted to thank Mr. Slater and his team. They're great collaborators with us as they've been working on all of these projects. They talk regularly with us about how they can improve safety on a project, and right now we're working very closely on the Selman South down 301, looking at the update of the Riverview Community Plan and how that can align with that project. So just really appreciate that.
All right. Any other comments, questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Soria?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Slater. One question, because the expressway does help in relieving traffic congestions in various parts of Tampa. How do you perceive the expressway being used in other parts where it doesn't go through downtown, for example, northern part of the county where the traffic wants to avoid downtown and go through the other parts of Hillsborough County? But would that be something the expressway would look into it, or?
So, it's funny, when we sit down with FDOT and sit down with Florida Turnpike, we're always kind of looking at, okay, where can we each focus? And so when I sat down with them, a while back, FDOT had a ton of projects on that 275 corridor. They had Howard Franklin going. They were really focused on that Pasco County side. Florida Turnpike was focused a little bit further in. They had some I-4 work going on. The southern Hillsborough County piece was the one that nobody was really focusing on, and they asked us if we would kind of take that, and I said, yeah, sure, we can take that. But anytime that there's an opportunity for us to try and solve an issue, we're always willing to take a look at it and see if it works for us from a business standpoint. So it's, because we are 100% funded through the toll revenue, so what we do is we run these traffic models and revenue models, and then we bond all that out to really free FDOT and the Turnpike up of the responsibility there so that they can use those tax dollars on other types of projects. But you're right, it does truly work as a system. It's all got to be kind of connected. And so, for instance, we're looking at some things from a technology perspective today. If you can prevent some of the backups, so it could be signal timing, it could be use of AI, it could be use of all kinds of different technological advances to manage the system off the expressway to make it better on the expressway at the same time. But yeah, we definitely have to work as a team because frankly, the people that we're serving, they normally don't know or don't care whose road they're on.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, because one of the biggest challenges, I work in the airport, and the airport wants to expand. So if we want a lot of people to go in and out of the airport and they go through I-4 and stuck in traffic all the time, so there's no solution for them to go through and go to Lakeland or other counties.
Right.
So I just wanted to bring that up.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, the airport is truly a regional asset, much like the port.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Not seeing any, then we'll thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And we will move on to our next agenda item, our only action item, 4A, amendments to the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Procedures Manual for unincorporated Hillsborough County, and the presenter is David Hay.
Good afternoon, commissioners. David Hay with your staff. This next item, it's your sole action item for this regular meeting. This is a proposed update to the Comprehensive Plan Procedures Manual for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Just a quick overview. The last update of the manual was in October of 2022. It was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. During that time, staff is always looking at identifying where there's pinch points, where staff's either having a challenge or the applicants are having a challenge with the process and the deadline. So staff is always looking at that for potential improvements. So we've identified some potential changes. First, currently amendments to the urban service area boundary are classified as a text amendment. This has caused confusion in the past since a map is required to process the text amendment. Planning Commission staff is proposing to bring text amendments which seek to expand the urban service area under the map amendment process. Secondly, under the proposed language, privately initiated text amendments will no longer be required to go through an additional review initial review by the Board of County Commissioners before entering into the official text amendment process. Staff has found that this additional process created some unnecessary delays and added complexity into the plan amendment process, both for the applicant and Planning Commission staff. Another process that added undue delays to the overall plan amendment process was the management and monitoring of the required neighborhood meetings. Currently, all plan amendment applicants must conduct a required neighborhood meeting, meeting certain noticing, timing, and place of meeting requirements in the current procedures manual. Planning Commission staff is proposing to remove this requirement and return the process back to a similar process that was in place prior to 2022. Under the proposed language, applicants would be encouraged to conduct a neighborhood meeting. The following changes would bring the unincorporated county under the same procedures as what is currently required of applicants in our 3 other municipalities. These changes include requiring any changes to an application, such as a change in the size or the category requested, must be received at least 45 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. This change would give additional time to coordinate with our partner agencies when reviewing a plan amendment application. And finally, a proposed change would place a 180-day requirement for Board of County Commissioner action after the official Planning Commission recommendation is rendered. After 180 days, if no Board of County Commissioner action has taken place, the application would be considered withdrawn. That is already the process within the 3 municipalities. With that, the Planning Commission staff does recommend to you all this afternoon that the proposed Comprehensive Plan Amendment Procedures Manual for the unincorporated Hillsborough County be found consistent and forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Helps if I hit the button.
All right. We had one individual sign up for the public comment on this item. Cami Corbett.
Good afternoon, Cami Corbett with the law firm of Hill, Ward, and Henderson. I came prepared to speak in support of the changes. All of the changes I was aware of, I did support. This last change that was discussed about the 180 days was not one I was aware of, and I do not support that. There are many times where someone wants to file a companion zoning application, and typically we can get through a rezoning within 6 months, but sometimes we get continued and there are technical transportation delays. So someone might want to wait till they got a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission before they actually filed their rezoning, since you don't look at that. So I can see the 180-day time period being a little bit problematic. If you wanted to add a time period, perhaps a year might be reasonable. But it also should be something that can be waived by the board. I don't know why we would artificially constrain the board as to when they act and how they act. But otherwise, I'm in full support of the changes. I think a lot of unintended consequences, including a lot of extra work on the Planning Commission with the old process. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. I will give you a 3-minute period of response or rebuttal, Mr. Hay, if you wanted to say anything.
I'm available if you have any questions.
All right. Oop. Mrs. Renita?
Well, sure. I would just respond that it was not our intent to limit the issue of concurrent rezonings. As a matter of fact, we added some wording in acknowledging that the timing of an adoption hearing may need to be adjusted to accommodate the rezoning process. So I'm thinking perhaps we could add. Now I'm trying to find the 180-day thing, what page that's on. Add some, thank you very much. We could add something to that allows for, flexibility if there was a concurrent rezoning, because that was not our intention to limit that.
All right, well I'll open it up to discussion by the commissioners now to see if any of the commissioners have any questions, because I immediately have a question that's going to kind of change the motion that's going to be made for this. Wouldn't we not have to make a motion adding that, directing you to add that information?
Yeah, let me see if I can get you some wording.
Okay, all right. And I did have some questions for you also, Mr. Hay. So I was just wanted to confirm that So this is publicly initiated, right? Staff, like you said, took a look at this stuff and basically saw efficiencies, and staff is proposing that we take advantage of these efficiencies.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll hang out for just a minute and see if any of the other commissioners have any questions or comments or discussion items on this one.
Well, I would just also add to Mr. Hayes' answer that we also have heard from a number of applicants over the last 2 years about some of these aspects of the process, as well as heard from our client government, the unincorporated county, about them. Particularly the initial review of the text amendments was brought up by the Board of County Commissioners as being overly bureaucratic.
Okay, so it's a lot of people have been talking about this apparently. All right, good to know. I just wanted to be sure. All right, are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners on this? And Commissioner Sharia?
Just on the time frame, because it's 180 days, does that allow us to be more efficient when we increase time to a year? Would that make it delay the process for like a citizen who wants to get it done faster, or how would that impact that change if we do make that?
Well, I can speak for staff. I mean, it's a challenge for staff when there's multiple, some of these are extended a year, 2 years out. I kind of, how I view it, we're air traffic controllers trying to get things into a landing. If there's more of these that get, they have to turn around basically and keep circling the airport, it becomes more of a challenge for staff to kind of manage it and make sure they're coming in for a landing at the appropriate hearing.
Okay. So the longer the time, the more stuff is hanging. Is that?
Yes, that's one of the issues that staff has experienced, is that as more and more are attached to rezonings, they have a tendency to extend out in time. So then, because when they're directed, the rezoning and the plan amendment have to come to the same hearing. So the zonings usually, like Ms. Corbett was saying, sometimes do delay it. So that will delay the plan amendment longer.
Okay, thank you.
So it's circling the airport.
I appreciate that.
All right. Any other, Commissioner Cronin?
Yeah, so I guess the challenge is after the 180 days and it gets withdrawn, that really creates more work for some of the folks that have already gotten stuff approved. I think that's where my thought is that, you have a lot of people that put a lot of work into it, and then that 180 days expires, and then they have to start from scratch. I think that could be a challenge.
All right. Points, yes.
Just to, that provision was added into, in particular, Plant City and the City of Tampa's procedures manual at their jurisdiction's request. The City of Tampa had concerns about City Council hearing plan amendments so long after the Planning Commission had rendered a finding, and that a lot could have changed within that time. The City of Plant City wanted to address some issues they were having with trying to align the rezonings and concurrent annexations and plan amendments. And so, again, that's why staff added it here, was just to be consistent with the other jurisdictions. If it's the Planning Commission's pleasure, you all could make a recommendation that be a year. Alternatively, we could add a sentence at the end of that paragraph that says, this provision will not apply if additional time is needed to process a concurrent rezoning. That might also provide that flexibility, but those are two options.
All right, I have a question. So Hillsborough County doesn't have that limitation now in the manual. So
correct, they do not.
Could we just strike the 180 days and not put that whole section in there? Like, if staff decided to put that, our board can say we just strike the thing and let it, go without it, because it doesn't exist now. So
yes, you would just make a motion that the additional language on page 7 not be added.
Right. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners before we get down to business here on this action item? Seeing none, going once, going twice, and I will close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this one. Commissioner Kona.
Yeah, I'll take a chance at doing what we want to do here. I'd like to approve the amendment to the comprehensive plan amendment procedure manual, striking the add 180 days provision on page 7.
Okay. All right. We have a motion to approve striking the 180-day provision. Commissioner Bussa?
I'll second.
All right. We have a second to that motion. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners before we take our votes? Not seeing any, then we'll all signify their agreement by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you very much. And we will, thank you. And we will move on to our next agenda item, briefings. And we will start with 5A, HCCPA 23-15, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Energy Industrial Park Secondary Uses, and the presenter is Melissa Leinhardt.
It is me. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Melissa Leinhardt with your Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present to you HCCPA 23-15 regarding the Energy Industrial Park Secondary Uses. You may remember this item from earlier this year. This request was originally briefed back in June and then a public hearing with you all in July. At that time, the request was found inconsistent, and following that meeting, the applicant then continued the item to the October cycle of plan amendments and revised their request as well. Today, we're providing a brief summary of the revised request, and the public hearing is set for, or scheduled, I should say, for January 13th. So this is a privately initiated text amendment that applies to one geographical area of unincorporated Hillsborough County. Specifically, the text applies to about 3,000 acres of land that's on the south side of State Road 60. The applicant is requesting to modify existing language under the Energy Industrial Park section of the future land use section that pertains to this area. This request was originally part of the April 2024 cycle of plan amendments, and again, now it's in the October 2024 cycle. The site is in the urban service area. It's not located within the limits of any community plan, and the site is generally bordered by State Road 60 on the north, Dover Road on the west, Turkey Creek Road on the east, and Durant Road to the south. The Energy Industrial Park Future Land Use category, it's a unique category in that it applies to one area of the county. This category, along with the text that supports the category and contains its vision and its requirements for the overall Energy Industrial Park Future Land Use category, that was created through a privately initiated text amendment back in 2010. And the policies were written based on the topography of the site as well as the available energy producing technology at that time. Then in 2022, some of you were here, there was a privately initiated text amendment that modified the language that would allow for one energy producing output rather than the two that were originally approved, so long as that output was doubled to achieve the vision of the Energy Industrial Park. That amendment was approved and that language is effective today. Or in effect today, I should say. This is one of two Energy Industrial Park privately initiated amendments in the October cycle, so I want to be very clear. You will hear the next one next, conveniently back to back. HCCPA 2406 is the other amendment, and that is a separate amendment that I will be covering in the next agenda item. Both 2315, which is this one, and 2406, which is the next one, affect the same site, so the Energy Industrial Park overall. But each request is a different request, and there's also different property owners involved. Same subject site, different applicants. But again, both amendments affect the entire property because this is a text amendment, so it does apply for the entire Energy Industrial Park. And that is the area outlined in yellow there, or colored yellow outlined in red. We're also working in close collaboration for both items with all the reviewing agencies. So as far as the impacts are concerned, the current language states that all industrial, office, and commercial uses are limited to a 700-acre area in the northwest portion of the site, and that's along State Road 60. The retail and commercial uses, according to the existing and adopted language, they're not permitted on State Road 60 east of Turkey Creek, and that means Turkey Creek, the creek, not Turkey Creek Road. I have an exhibit here that I'll show you in just a minute. The proposed language would remove the word northwest and replace it with north, and it would also delete the words along State Road 60, and that's according to, that's in that 700-acre language that I mentioned above. It would also allow for commercial uses in the area east of the creek, Turkey Creek, by replacing the language with a folio number, and again, I'm going to show you an exhibit in a minute. That's the folio located directly east of Turkey Creek. So you can see from the graphic on the west, the area outlined in red, I should start with the area outlined in black is the whole energy industrial park future land use category. The area in red on the northern section next to State Road 60, that's the new folio number that the applicant is asking to switch out from the language that's today. And the graphic on the west, let's see if I can get my cursor here. Can you all see that? Yes. This is Turkey Creek outlined in blue, right? And this is State Road 60 here. This is the folio in question. This is the limit today. Commercial uses are not allowed east of this creek itself. The applicant is asking to change that to this particular folio number instead of how it's written today. And that concludes my presentation. Those are the changes that are proposed, and we'll be back in January for a public hearing. I'm here for any questions that you have.
All right, and this is a briefing, so if anybody has any questions or foresees anything coming up, Commissioner Buzzard, see you moving.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I know that we had an issue with this one due to some environmental concerns, which aren't technically our purview, but just for a matter of conscience, how does Hillsborough County, the EPC, will they be able to look at when the PD comes for this down the road and be able to vet that environmental has been addressed?
Yes.
There's some serious issues on this property.
Yes, sir, and they are not in this folio that I have here on the site. They're kind of to the south and west of that.
Right.
Those were included in the previous agency comments that you all reviewed as part of the public hearing back from the summer. But we did, just based on the changes for this, because the changes were not considered minor, we sent that back out to reviewing agencies, and we're receiving those now. But when I see you back in January for the public hearing, I'll have more information on that. But those were the comments that were included. There is a super fun site on this property, again, a little bit to the south and west of where that red highlight is, but we'll be presenting that when we do receive those comments back.
Okay. And, you know, with commercial and retail, obviously they're not primary residents for somebody, so I don't have a real issue with this request, but just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Right, and I should also mention that though it is not part of y'all's purview, there is a companion rezoning, so the board will be looking at the rezoning that's a companion to this when they do make their decision.
All right, were there any other questions or comments on this? And I did have a quick question. I was noticing in reading through the language, obviously this is privately initiated, but as staff goes through this, I'm wondering if, you know, obviously when it's privately initiated, someone's paying to have this done and they want to try and get it through as efficiently as possible. But in reading the language, it seems like we're unwinding some things, like instead of northwest, we're going to north. I'm wondering, why do we even need that specificity to begin with? Why can't we just talk about, like, okay, it has to, you know, be distributed, or what is tamped down? Is it, you know, just in general, instead of saying north and northwest or north to south? So as staff goes through this and you're moving through before this comes back to us for final, like, I just wanted to throw that out there to think about that. Like, maybe it should just be more vague in general, even though we're kind of tagging it to a folio number, which I also find kind of strange. Like, if the property appraiser changes the folio number or does something, do we then have to come back and change the comp plan? Like, there's all these weird things going on, and you know me about binding. I don't like for us to be binding people. I like for things to be very, you know, vague in policy, and then if a law needs to be set, the Board of County Commissioners can set the law and do that sort of stuff. So keep all that in mind as this goes forward.
Yes, sir. I completely understand that, and I have two comments, if you don't mind, regarding that subject. One, this is privately initiated, and it's a originally privately initiated amendment. So in 2010, when this came from not staff. So when it was privately initiated, that was the language that came to the table. That specificity was something that they came up with at the time and that we then reviewed. Now, that being said, I do agree with you that if there is some glaring inconsistency, and I mean like with language, not finding, then we would point that out and say, did you mean this, or did you mean that, or this is overly confusing, you know, kind of take a step back. One thing that I did get a call about from a nearby resident is that this folio, and I thought this was a very good point, that could change over time, right? So something that we had planned on talking to the applicant about was perhaps, you know, this could be more of a legal description. I mean, depending on how comfortable they were, if they want to move it eastward, that maybe this is not the best mechanism, you know, because someone could go, if they own the property adjacent, they could go to the property appraiser and they could combine the property, and then it could creep further eastward.
Right.
And that would be kind of away from the intent. So I think that this was a good thought moving forward, but that maybe we need to hone in on that a little bit, and I was going to talk to the applicant after this.
Good deal. All right. Any other comments or questions on this one from the commissioners? Not seeing any, we'll thank you and move on to our next one. That's 5B, HCCPA 24-06, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Energy Industrial Park for Residential. And it is back to Miss Melissa Leinhardt again.
This is me again. Hi, everyone. For the record, Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 2406 that I mentioned in the previous presentation. This is about the energy industrial park, but for specifically to add residential uses. This item was also briefed to you back in September, so you may remember it. The applicant did continue the item prior to the public hearing at the Planning Commission, so you all never gave a consistency finding for that item. The consistency review was not made, and at this point, the applicant has revised the request, which is what I'm going to do my presentation on today. This is a privately initiated text amendment that applies to one geographical area of unincorporated county, as I mentioned in the previous presentation, specifically 3,000 acres on the south side of State Road 60. One of the proposed changes affects the 475-acre parcel that's to the south of the railroad tracks, and I'll show you a graphic in just a minute. But the other proposed changes that are privately initiated as part of this Amendment 24-06 would apply to the entire energy industrial area future land use category. So one change is for a particular area, the rest of them would apply to all of it. So this request was originally part of the January 2024 cycle of plan amendments, and as I mentioned, it's been continued to the October cycle. The site is in the urban service area. It's not located within the limits of a community plan. The site is generally bordered, like I mentioned, on the north side is State Road 60, west is Dover. The eastern boundary is Turkey Creek Road, and to the south is Durant Road. And actually, as you can see, I'll point out here, this here is the railroad tracks, and then this kind of cutout here is a TICO easement. So this category, as I mentioned, was created in 2010 as part of a privately initiated plan amendment. The policies were written during that time based on the topography of the site and the energy producing technology that was available at the time. There was a large public outreach in 2010 and a text amendment modifying the required number of alternative energy outputs was adopted in 2022, as I had mentioned in my previous presentation. And again, this is one of two energy industrial park amendments that you will see for the October cycle. The one I presented previously was HCCPA 23-15. That's a separate amendment completely. Again, two different amendments, two different property owners, but the same subject site. And the same Planning Commission planner, me, will be reviewing both of the items, so you get to see me twice. And we're working in close collaboration with all the reviewing agencies. So as far as the impacts are concerned with the existing language, currently within the energy industrial park, there's no residential density allowed. There is a requirement for a minimum of 40% of the land area needs to be utilized for those energy producing uses. It does require energy producing uses first before you can construct the other uses. It also limits the industrial type uses, research, manufacturing, warehousing, that type of thing, to 30% of the overall land area. And it also requires direct access from a major arterial roadway. In this case, it would be State Road 60. So the proposed changes, it would change the name from Energy Industrial Park to Energy Innovation Park. It would allow for consideration of residential at up to 3 dwelling units per acre in that 475 acre tract to the south of the railroad tracks. Again, I have a graphic for that in just a minute. It would allow for direct access to a collector roadway for those proposed residential uses, and that would be to the west, which is Dover Road. It would remove language that requires the energy-producing energy being constructed first as a requirement. And then it would decrease the minimum requirement for energy-producing uses from 40% is the requirement today to 20% throughout the entire energy industrial park area. It would further remove the language that commercial and industrial uses are ancillary to those energy-producing uses. It would allow for those industrial uses to exceed the current limit of 30% of the overall land area by not specifying a limit. It would allow for the potential of additional energy industrial park, or now they're calling it energy innovation park designations in other parts of unincorporated Hillsborough County. And it would also specifically allow rooftop solar or other forms of co-located energy production. And here's the graphic that I was mentioning. So this is the entire site outlined in pink, and then you have this kind of cutout here, which is the railroad tracks. The residential is proposed on the southwest side of that and would access from Dover Road. It's about 475 acres in size. And again, the entire site is outlined in that pink kind of dotted line. And then I'm here for any questions that you have. That concludes my presentation.
All right. Were there any questions or comments from the commissioners? I'll just go ahead and echo my last comments from the last one again. So it gives me even more pause because it seems like we're getting down to more designy things. And don't get me wrong, I cut my teeth on doing this as a professional. I'm known for writing guidelines on how to develop for people. So, but at this level of policy and comp plan, this specificity seems really, really odd. And I realize that some of it's already in there. I get that. Right. People did things in the past when none of us were around that we probably wouldn't agree with, and that's there. But going forward, it would seem like trying to get that specificity again is going to, 10 years from now, they're going to come back and look at this thing again and go, oh, okay, well, we need to shift these specific things again. You know what I mean? Right. So it seems really weird to me. Ms. Ornita moving.
Yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context that when this amendment was brought forward originally in 2010, the privately initiated applicant was proposing this new land use category. And at the time, we were under a very different regime sounds wrong, but approach to statewide planning in Florida. The Department of Community Affairs took a very heavy hand in reviewing of comprehensive plan amendments, particularly of this scale. They were expanding the urban service area. There was a lot of scrutiny on it, and there was a lot of neighborhood opposition. So the privately initiated, the private applicant at the time was balancing in trying to get it approved a lot of things including a state objection to the amendment. And so that is what required some of the detail to be put in the plan to begin with. And I would just add that all of these amendments continue to garner a lot of public scrutiny, and I think the applicants are trying to balance that they're respectful of the level of detail that was put in the plan originally.
All right. It's all good information to keep in mind, so thank you for putting that out there. Are there any other questions from the, yes, Commissioner Buzzer?
Question for staff. When this was originally done, though, wasn't it kind of a negotiation of the existing, you had the Sydney Washer sludge pit, it had the historic industrial uses from phosphate, and it was a negotiated kind of agreement on this designation as energy park, if I run, that this was going to be developable, but in the energy park guise. So I see the chair's point to a certain degree, but then this whole parcel can be, depending on the mood of the county commission or that sort of thing, toss that out. I think the reason that may be needed to kind of keep some of this within the lines is, again, what the original purpose of this thing was, which was to contain something that still has a Superfund site on it, and it's backing up to residential, and we're now talking about residential putting on the south side of that, which I'm not thrilled with, but Is that correct, that this was kind of a negotiated deal to make this developable?
It was. I don't know that it was ever deemed that it could not be developed for residential uses outside of the Superfund site. I mean, that is, I think, 17 or 27. I can't remember. It's a small portion
Yeah,
of
you can
the
actually
over-
see it if, I don't know if, HTV, can they pull up my PowerPoint? This square here, from what I
Oh, yeah.
understand, this is the geographical limits, this parcel, the outline here of that sludge pond. I don't know if you all can see, oh, yeah.
So it's a pretty small area of the overall site. But yes, it absolutely, the applicant at the time was negotiating something. They had a very specific end user in mind with these alternative energy forms that just never came to fruition. The other thing that I think is a big difference between 2010 and now is that in 2010, the Planning Commission staff was very much, myself being one of them, saying that it was not the time to expand the urban surface area for residential uses. And we have since brought forward a very different recommendation that in order to accommodate future population growth, we need to expand the urban service area. This is not a part of one of the areas that the board directed us to look at, but they did ask us to look at the I-4 corridor down to State Road 60. So those are just a couple of things that, I mean, a lot has changed, I guess, is my point, in the 14 years.
All right. Were there any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
I don't have a question, but I'll just repeat myself, and I'll repeat myself next month, and to remind all the commissioners that this entire site is a wetland, and from the USGS national map, and it's also 100% within a flood zone. And in fact, it has a levee around it to keep the water in, so just a reminder.
Good points. Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. Any other comments or questions, statements from the commissioners? Not seeing any. Well, thank you. And move on to our next agenda item, 5C, HCCPA 24-32, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment. Surprise, surprise. Plan Environmental Community Policy 47.18, and the presenter is Melissa Leinhardt.
They're really having me earn my keep today. Melissa Leinhardt, for the record, Planning Commission staff. This is HCCPA 24-32, the Planned Environmental Community 1/2, regarding Policy 47.18. So this is a privately initiated text amendment. It applies to about 1,954 acres of land that's west of US Highway 301, south of the Pasco County border. It's just north of Hillsborough River State Park. This is a proposed privately initiated text amendment that would remove Policy 47.18 under Objective 47 of the future land use element. And I should mention that we do have a new future land use section that is in effect as of December 2nd, so just a few days ago. So we will be updating these numbers in the two previous and this one based on the new plan, but those hadn't changed with the update. They're just numbers at this point. As I mentioned, the general location is up here near the Pasco County border. It's this up here. This is part of the October 24 cycle of plan amendments. The site's in the rural area, and there's no community plan associated with the property. So regarding the background, this was a new category in text that was proposed via privately initiated text amendment back in 2005. So now we're going even further back. The effect of the new category was to have an increase in density on properties in the rural area served by public water and wastewater in exchange for environmental protection enhancements. The current policy, 47.18, it says that planned developments in this category must provide public access to portions of a regional resource. The requirement does not mandate a trail access to all portions of this resource. And if public policy prohibits the public entry, then access can be limited to viewing only. And for purposes of this policy, there is a regional resource definition in our definition section, and it's defined as a large, so minimum of 1,000 acres, environmentally significant and verified publicly owned park or natural resource area, And it lists the examples of something like an ELAP land, a river, stream, bay, or lake, bless you. The proposed policy would delete this policy in its entirety, and the applicant has cited safety concerns from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm here for any questions that you may have.
All right. Were there any questions from the commissioners on this item? Not seeing any, then we'll thank you for the information, and we will move on to our next agenda item.
Thank you.
5D, HCCPA 24-35, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Balm East Urban Service Area Expansion, and the presenter is Jay Collins.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Jay Collins, Planning Commission staff, as I squint at this. So for these two text amendments that were, these two amendments that we have 2435, then a map amendment with it, 2436. Basically, when you do a expansion of the urban service boundary in unincorporated Hillsborough County, that is a text amendment. And then there is a corresponding map amendment with it. So in this one, we have Balm Waimama Road East. Why is it east? It's on the east side of Balm Waimama Road. So again, this one is about 370 acres, and this is an expansion of the urban service boundary, and it is associated with 2436. It is privately initiated. Basically, what we're going to do here is it's the same thing as what this body saw a couple of months ago when we had 4 privately initiated amendments in Waimama. This one is the 2 privately initiated that you now have in the Balm area. Later on today, you'll actually, for your last briefing, will actually be the publicly initiated amendments for the urban service boundary expansion in RP2 and WVR2. So you'll get the whole package today. So a little bit about these. This is one aerial that shows all of this together. So we're on the east side. So that's 2435, 2436 underneath it. That's the east side. On the west side of it, again, Balm Waimama Road being that east-west separation is 2437, 2438. We do have a separate presentation for it. So again, the amendment would bring about 370 acres into the urban service area, requiring at a minimum a connection to public water and sewer. This concludes the presentation for the text amendment.
Commissioner Lauk, sorry.
It's only been 3 years.
You've been quiet today, so you got me off guard.
Well, don't get me stirred up. Thank you for the great context on the publicly initiated USA at the beginning of the presentation. That's helpful. That was my first question. Follow-up question, does this one fall within the same geographic footprint that's being considered in the publicly initiated USA expansion?
It is. These lands are residential plan 2, and that was the board's initiation for us to actually move on RP2.
Thank you.
All right. Were there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any. We'll ask you to continue.
And then this would be the land use associated with it. Again, this is a regular map amendment, 370 acres. Currently, it is designated residential plan 2. The applicant is requesting residential 4. Generally, where we are, we're in southeastern Hillsborough County. This is in the rural area, Balm Community Plan, and the South Shore area-wide systems. One thing here, this is a good indicator. We'll have some aerials and some other maps that'll show it, but we are about 2 miles as the crow flies from the urban service boundary today. I say that only because of the fact that there's a lot of residential plan 2 and a lot of Waimama Village residential 2 down there. Shows you the breadth and the scope of how much land is in this area that we're talking about for changes. This shows you an aerial of the site. Generally where we are here, some vacant that's in this area. There is a planned development on that site utilizing the residential plan 2 village concept. So again, it is actually entitled for suburban development. You do have on the west side of this also a residential plan 2 that is also entitled for suburban development. Other areas in this you'll see a little bit to the south and to the west. There's a TECO solar array that's down there. There's some agricultural in this area, as well as some large lot subdivision that you'd see in other rural development pattern. Again, land uses that we have, residential plan 2 shown in the black around, Waimama Village Residential 2 in that gray blue to the south and to the west. You also have natural preservation to the south and to the west, and to the south and to the east is agricultural rural 1 to 5. This is showing the residential 4 on the site. And a little bit on the impacts. Again, the proposed amendment would remove the residential plan 2 community commercial use and the planned village concept while increasing the potential density, as you can see in the numbers there. I thank you for your time, and this concludes this presentation.
All right. Are there any questions, comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any, then we'll move on to F, HCCPA 24-37, and G, HCCPA 24-38. The presenter is Jay Collins for both.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we'll run through this quickly since we introduced it with the other one. This is privately initiated text amendment for 272.3 acres. Again, currently this is a residential 2 land use. This is that same aerial that we use on the other to basically position ourselves in the BOM community. This amendment would bring 272.3 acres into the urban service area, requiring at a minimum connection to public water and sewer. And this concludes the presentation for this text amendment.
Are there any questions on this one, comments? We'll ask you to continue.
Again, the map amendment corresponding with it. It's privately initiated, again, a regular amendment, 272.3 acres from residential plan 2 to residential 4, same as the other amendment, same as what the board has initiated with the publicly initiated amendments. This, again, is showing you the general location of where we are in southeastern Hillsborough County within the BOM Community Plan and the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. Same thing here again with an aerial looking down at the site. This one, since we have moved that aerial slightly to the west, you can see that blue line, which is the existing urban service boundary. So pretty much where we are from that blue line in the urban service boundary running to the east, those lands are either residential plan 2, Waimama Village Residential 2, or natural preservation lands. Here we can see the current land uses in the area. Again, the residential plan 2 to the south, Waimama Village Residential 2, to the west, natural preservation, and also to the east, again, some of the agricultural rural 1 to 5. Here this shows the residential 4 on the site, and also we zoom this out just a little bit as well, which shows you in the urban service boundary where you can see, again, some residential 6s, residential 4s, as well as some office commercial 20s that are in the urban service boundary down along 674 and Waimama. Impact, same as the other one. The proposed amendment would remove the residential plan 2 community commercial use in the planned village concept while increasing the potential density on the site, and you can see the numbers there. And again, this concludes this presentation. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this one? All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, and that is 5H, HCCPA 24-40, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 7812 Causeway Boulevard, and the presenter is Alexis Myers.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2440, located at 7812 Causeway Boulevard. This is a privately initiated map amendment that is small in scale and approximately 8.39 acres. The request is to go from residential 9 to office commercial 20. Here's the general location map. The site is in the urban service area and within the limits of the Greater Palm River Community Plan, and it is north of Delaney Creek. Here is the aerial of the site. The site currently has vacant land and light commercial uses. Light commercial uses are directly south, and then single family uses are north. Oh, and then let me go back. And then for Delaney Creek, it's just right north of this area. Okay. The adopted future land use is residential 9, and the other future land use categories shown in this map include office commercial 20 and residential 20. Here's the proposed future land use map. The applicant is requesting to change the future land use to office commercial 20. Here are the impacts as far as existing conditions. The site could consider up to 75 dwelling units or 127,913 square feet, or 182,734 square feet of non-residential uses. Under the potential future land use category of OC20, the site could consider 167 units or 127,913 square feet or 274,101 square feet of non-residential uses. The proposed amendment will result in the increase of higher residential density and greater commercial intensity, including commercial intensive uses. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2440, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All righty. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any. We'll thank you for the information and move on to our next agenda item. 5I is HCCPA 24-41 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 12462 Brownsbury Road, and the presenter is Tyreek Royal.
Hey, good afternoon, Tyreek Royal, Planning Commission staff. Today I'll be presenting HCCPA 24-41 at 12462 Brownsbury Road. This request is privately initiated, small-scale map amendment with approximately 27.70 acres. The request is to change the land use designation from AR15 to OC20. The location of the site is in the northeastern portion of the unincorporated Hillsborough County. It's part of the October 2024 cycle and located in the Tenosa Community Plan. This is an aerial of the photos. This is an aerial photo of the site outlined in pink. It's located on Brownsbury Road and west of McIntosh Road. Surrounding uses include agricultural and vacant uses to the north, west, and east, and single-family uses to the south. The site is in the AR15 future land use category. It allows for the consideration of farms, ranches, residential uses, rural-scale neighborhood commercial, offices, industrial uses related to agricultural, mining-related activities. Commercial uses are subject to locational criteria. The applicant is requesting to change the future land use category from AR15 to OC20. The OC20 allows for consideration of community commercial type uses, office uses, mixed-use developments, and compatible residential uses. Agricultural uses may be permitted pursuant to the policies and the agricultural objective areas of the future land use element. The impacts, onto the impacts, the change from AR15 to OC20 will allow for increase in development by allowing significantly higher residential density and greater commercial intensity. The density of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres would increase to 20 dwelling units per gross acre. The commercial intensity, including commercial intensive, would increase from a 0.25 FAR or a maximum of 300,000 square feet approximately to 0.75 FAR or a maximum of 900,000 square feet approximately. Anything over 0.35 FAR must be an office or residential support use, not retail. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this one from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this point. Well, thank you for the information. And move on to our next item, 5J, HCCPA 24-42 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 2212 South 78th Street, and the presenter is Alexis Myers.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff. I'm here again to present HCCPA 2442, located at 2212 South 78th Street. This is a privately initiated map amendment that is small in scale and approximately 2.29 acres. The request is to go from residential 9 to residential 16. Here's a general location map. The site is in the urban service area and within the limits of the Greater Palmer River Community Plan. Here is the aerial of the site. It is east of South 78th Street and north of South 24th Street. Avenue. The current adopted future land use is residential 9, and other future land use maps shown in this map include office commercial 20, residential 20, and residential 6. The applicant again is proposing to change the future land use to residential 16. These are the impacts. As far as existing conditions, the site can consider up to 20 dwelling units or 34,913 square feet or 49,876 square feet of non-residential uses. Under the proposed future land use category of OC20, the site could consider 36 dwelling units or the same amount of non-residential uses. The proposed amendment will result in the increase of higher residential density. And this concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2442, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this one? It's not seeing any. Well, thank you for the information and move on to our next item. 5K is HCCPA 24-43 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 7351 Muck Pond Road, and the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Hi, Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. I'll be briefing on HCCPA 24-43, which is at 7351 Muck Pond Road. This request is a privately initiated small-scale map amendment. It's made up of 3 parcels that total approximately 19.1 acres. The request is to change the land use designation of these parcels from residential 1 to light industrial planned. The location of this plan amendment request is in the eastern portion of unincorporated county. It's part of the October 2024 cycle, located in the rural area and within the limits of the Thona-DeSassa Community Plan. This is an aerial photo of the site outlined in pink. It's located south of Muck Pond Road, northwest of Interstate 4 and McIntosh Road. Within the vicinity of the site, there is single-family residential and agricultural uses to the north, light and heavy commercial uses to the east. It's bound by Interstate 4 to the south, and there are agricultural uses to the west. The site's in the residential 1 future land use category. It allows for consideration of low-density residential, rural-scale neighborhood commercial, office, multi-purpose projects, and neighborhood commercial uses are subject to locational criteria. Surrounding land use categories include residential 1 to the north, east, and west. There is suburban mixed-use 6 and public, quasi-public south of Interstate 4. There's 1 subdivision further southwest of the site with the designation of residential 6, which is that yellow color you see on the slide. The request is to change the site to light industrial planned, which allows for consideration of uses such as processing, manufacturing, recycling, and storage of materials as the predominant uses, including support offices, warehousing, and rural-scale retail uses pursuant to locational criteria, and no residential is allowed under this category. This slide outlines the potential impacts of the requested land use change. Currently under residential 1, the site can be considered for up to 19 dwelling units, or approximately 208,000 square feet of non-residential uses subject to locational criteria. The change to light industrial planned would not allow for consideration of residential uses, but would allow for approximately up to 624,000 square feet of non-residential uses. The proposed amendment will increase the potential commercial intensity and eliminate residential uses, and it would also introduce light industrial uses. And this concludes my briefing on this item, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Were there any questions from the commissioners on this one? I did want to make a statement. Just looking at that map, when I went through it, it looked kind of hodgepodgey out there, so I'm going to probably want some information on like the history of how some of those things came to be, so just keep that in mind as you're working through this process. All right, and I'll check for any other questions or comments. Not seeing any, well, thank you for the information.
Thank you.
And we will move on to our next agenda item. Did you have something to say?
Well, I was just going to introduce that these items, these next two, because they're publicly initiated related to the expansion of the urban service area, we structured them a little bit different than some of the others. So I just wanted to highlight that before Sophia started.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no problem. All right, so we'll do the next two then, 5L and 5M. First 5L is HCCPA 24-44 WVR2 and HCCPA 24-46 RP2 Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment. And then M will be HCCPA 24-45 WVR2 and HCCPA 24-47 RP2 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment. And both will be presented by Sophia Garantiva.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Sophia Garantiva, Planning Commission staff. And as mentioned, I'll be presenting the next two agenda items together in one presentation. So how it will go is I'll present the first two, the text amendments, HCCPA 44 and 2446 first, and then the map amendments HTCPA 2445 and 2447 afterwards, and then leave some time for questions. So starting with the text amendments for the urban service area expansion. These, again, are publicly initiated text amendments. As previously mentioned, the amendments are part of the board-directed expansion to the urban service area. This is the first phase, which includes the expansion of the urban service area boundary in the Balm-Waimama area with further direction to change the future land use of these areas to residential 4, which is the subject of the associated map amendments. These text amendments are proposing an expansion of the urban service area by a total of approximately 12,156 acres. Around 4,000 acres is a part of HCCPA 2444, and almost 8,000 acres is a part of 2446. So the following shows the entire boundary expansion area in hatched pattern with the red dashed line showing the actual boundary line. The blue solid line shows the existing USA boundary. And this is just a zoomed in aerial showing the expansion area in red, generally associated with CPA 2444 in the Waimama area. And this aerial shows the expansion area generally associated with CPA 2446 in the Balm Riverview area. So moving on to the companion map amendments, CPA 2445 and 47. Again, these are publicly initiated map amendments accompanying the text amendments. These amendments consist of approximately 15,787 total acres, with over 5,000 acres as part of CPA 2445 and a little bit over 10,000 acres as part of CPA 2447. The whole area would be going from Waimama Village Residential 2, WVR2, and Residential Plan 2, RP2, to Residential 4, Residential 2, Agricultural Rural 1 for 5 acres, and Natural Preservation. These amendments are generally located in southeast Hillsborough County, south of Lithia Pinecrest, west of County Road 39, and east of US Highway 31. They are in the rural area and lie within the Waimama, Balm, and Riverview community plans. They are also within the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. This aerial shows the general area. Again, you can see the proposed expansion area outlined in a red dashed line. The lands part of CPA 2445 are generally shown in the blue shading and have a WVR2 future land use designation. The lands part of CPA 2447 are shown in yellow shading and have an RP2 future land use designation. This shows the adopted future land use for the area. You can see the majority of the lands to the west are within the urban service area and have residential categories varying suburban densities, and a majority of the lands to the east are agricultural, rural residential, and natural preservation categories. Now this shows the proposed future land use of Res 4, natural preservation, Res 2, and AR 1 to 5. This also shows in black hatching, I know it might be a little bit hard to see, but the privately initiated amendments that have been processed to expand the urban service area. Just wanted to reiterate that these lands are excluded from these requests, as you can see. So if approved, the proposed amendments would reduce overall non-residential development potential, including removing RP2 community commercial uses, as well as removing the WVR2 commercial limitations. This would also include an increase in residential density potential and support environmental conservation efforts. This is specifically for county-owned properties in the ELAP program. And a more detailed impact breakdown for each amendment is available in the briefing packets. I did want to note that staff has started public engagement efforts. 2 in-person meetings were held in November at Sumner High School, which residents were informed of via mailed notice, sign postings, local news outlets, and social media. There's an ongoing online survey, and an additional in-person meeting is scheduled for January 30th at Sumner High School. This and more information is available on the project website. This concludes my presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any at this time, and we'll thank you for the information. Oop,
If I could
Ms.
just
Juanita?
add one thing, I don't think you mentioned the public land use category as one of the ones that it might be changing to. I think that's something we're still looking at.
Yes,
whether some
we're
of the
still looking at
lands-
that.
So I just wanted to mention that because we're still working with the county on some of the county-owned lands, whether or not they should be natural preservation or should be public, quasi-public lands. And so there may be some slight deviations from the maps that you were just shown. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, and while we're on that, if I may, the AR 1 to 5 also may be changing, again, because they are split land uses. We decided to keep them, but after further discussion, we might be changing those as well.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Nope. All right. Then with that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 6, because we're done with our briefings. So Executive Director's Report, and the presenter is Melissa Zornita.
Thank you for saying that slow enough, almost for me to get here. Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. At your seats, you have a sheet of my report of items and meetings and things that we've been participating in the last couple of weeks, because it hasn't been a full month since your last meeting. A couple of things I wanted to highlight, as Ms. Garantiva mentioned, we did have we've done a number of outreach meetings on the urban service area. They I think have gone pretty well in terms of informing people of what is occurring, and we're going to be continuing that. Those amendments will not be coming to you in January with the other amendments that were presented today, because we are having a workshop with the Board of County Commissioners in January on the publicly initiated urban service area amendments, another public meeting, as she mentioned, on January 30th, and then you have a special public hearing at the end of February for those items on the fourth Monday. There are a lot of landowners, so we're being cautious and having them on a separate night just in case a lot of people show up. We were not overwhelmed at the public meetings, so, but we'll see. We've had a good opportunity to meet with the new County Commissioner Bowles at the end of last month. And I also had the opportunity last week to present the City of Temple Terrace with both of their Community Design Awards. So both Tampa and Temple Terrace wanted that to occur, which was great. And then we've got a number of hearings coming up this week, which we've started briefings on. As you'll note, under the plan amendment updates, there's not a lot of action that took place in the 3 weeks since your last meeting, since Thanksgiving was in the middle. We did have one amendment, which the City Council, it was CPA 2408, Planning Commission staff and the Planning Commission found that inconsistent, and City Council approved that on first reading. It will go for second reading later this month.
Sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely.
I can't recall the applicant on that one. That one was presented by Mr. Pressman, correct?
It's Dartmouth Avenue. Help me. We might have to look it up. We'll look it up and get back to you.
It stands out to me because we found it. We match staff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Kress?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you all have any insight, or the governing body gave feedback as to why, it just might be good for us to understand that. It doesn't have to be right this second, just in general.
David's looking it up. Yeah, absolutely. No, we certainly can provide that.
Commissioner Loud? All right. Back to you, Ms. Zornita.
Okay, if he's got the answer before I'm done, we'll circle back. So we had today, after this meeting concludes, we will be having a public information committee meeting in the Plan Hillsborough room for those who want to join. Commissioner Kress is the chair of that committee. We'll be talking about a debrief of the planning and design awards and begin talking about plans for next year. So if you want to, while you're eating dinner, to come in there, you're welcome to join us. In January, we had been looking at having a workshop after the regular meeting, but we have a bit of time right now, so I thought perhaps I'd tee up a couple of the topics that we were thinking we might want to discuss and see whether or not we need a workshop in January. The first one was staff has been looking at some of the discussions you all have had as part of the recent Planning Commission meetings, and I wanted to point out that we made a change for the City of Plant City's Plan Amendment Report. If you'll note in tonight's packet, the Plan Amendment Report is structured slightly differently, and part of this was at the request of the City of Plant City, but as we watched some of the recent meetings, we thought maybe this same approach would be helpful to you all, because there's a lot of discussion around when you all want to find something, make a different finding from Planning Commission staff. What we've done in the Plant City report that's in your packet is the staff analysis is before the section of the policies, then there's staff's recommendation, then there are two sections of policies. One, those that staff utilized in support of their recommendation. And then a second section that are other policies that are applicable, but staff did not find those weighed as much in their recommendation going forward. In this case, it's a little less sharp of a contrast because this is the update of the Northeast Master Plan, and it's not something that we're finding inconsistent, and there's not that same, black and white and then the gray in the middle that we're talking about. And so, but if that format is appealing to you all, we could work on moving the other jurisdictions to that format. But that's an item that staff's been noticing, is that there's, sometimes a challenge for you all in seeing how perhaps the plan supports other points of views besides the one that the Planning Commission staff has taken. So I'll stop there and see if there's any discussion about that topic.
Right. Any comments, Commissioner Kress?
I think that sounds like it would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. Good observation.
Yeah, I think so too. As the one who always cries out about needing policies and stuff to support things, I think it would always help to give the commissioners something to look at, something to discuss even in the meetings. So, Commissioner Rowden.
Yeah, I like that idea. I wondered, since you're going in that direction, would there be possibility of something to think about? Would be a check sheet that said that someone, policy 1, 2, 3, 5, I weighted 10 over my decision. Policy 377 was a 6. So this way, so when we're talking about what it was, because, we get into this thing about the coastal high hazard area, and then it becomes, it's a swoosh, everything goes 100% that way, Can we, say, well, it wasn't 100%, this is what I saw, and these are the things. Just something to think about.
I'd like to second that idea.
I don't think it's a motion.
Right.
We know who likes it. So.
Yeah, no, that's very good feedback. I don't know that it would be as easy for staff to quantify the weighting, but I do think we can certainly work on articulating in the staff analysis the different components that oftentimes, as you all know, there are things that are in support of an amendment and things that are not in support of an amendment. And then ultimately, staff has weighed those in a certain way to come up with the recommendation. And I think it's that last paragraph or summation that is what you're seeking some more clarity on, and sort of how we balanced that. And absolutely, we can think about some ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's not numerical, maybe it's just the verbiage that says, this was weighed so heavily that this is, is what caused me to make this decision.
We can also speak about it in the meeting. You know, you don't feel ashamed to ask staff that. Well, did you find this more important than this other policy? Because, you know, that's a valid question to ask a staff member who's standing there presenting, because they made the decision based on the policy. So just to simply say, you know, well, why didn't you think I say it all the time? Why didn't you think about this? You know what I mean? Or why didn't you give credence to this? Good question. Commissioner Lau.
I think it's also important within the presentations to maybe discuss the points of, we looked at these items, we think they're applicable, but ultimately they didn't outweigh these provisions that are outlined within the report. And it keeps folks engaged with what's being said and not digging through the report itself, looking for those provisions while we're hearing the case to be made by staff.
Sure. Okay. Good feedback.
All right.
Is it all right if David asks
Yeah.
a question? Okay.
Sure.
This
You
is
may.
more of a workshop.
You may.
You know, a lot of times staff's looking at trying to condense presentations as much as possible to save time. A lot of times we'll say, you know, there's additional information in the staff report. Do you find that helpful, not helpful? Because we want to be cognizant of your time, and we don't want to overly extend presentations. So I'm just trying to get a good balance of what your all thought is on that.
I'm just one of 10, but you were looking at me when you asked it the first time, so I'll weigh in a little bit. When Melissa and I spoke earlier this week, I think an area of opportunity that we have from a staff perspective is the arguments that are made within the staff report are almost unanimously in support of the conclusion that staff made. And there's opportunity from an Aquinas perspective, where you say, these are the reasons it's compelling, these are the reasons we're recommending what we're recommending. However, we looked at these proofs and they didn't prove out, and here are the provisions that we looked at. And whether it's in a photo of a property, when we don't see the whole picture, I don't think it's nefarious, but we'll often see photos and pictures and maps that support staff's view on things, and then we'll see the applicant get up and say, okay, I know staff is recommending something different than what we want, but this is why we think it's important, and then they show the same property with different pictures that make a whole lot of sense. So I think from a disclosure standpoint, and then showing the board or the commissioners that we've gone through and looked at it from both perspectives, I think that would be helpful. So I don't know how you weigh that, David, within the presentations, but taking a look at it from both angles and weighing maybe 80-20 in the presentation, supporting your argument, I think would be helpful, at least from my perspective.
Well, I think I'm going to jump in here and you're going to let me speak, because I think that's a little bit dangerous, because we want to always make sure that staff's backing their, whatever recommendation staff makes. For me, at the end of the day, this whole thing could end up in court. And if staff's wishy-washy on what it's doing and not solidly taking a line with backing for the line that they're taking, if staff takes a line and then says, okay, but there's this other way, you know what I mean? We always want staff to be, affirmative in what they're doing. And so it kind of puts the onus on the board to then have to listen to and have discussions with the applicant, who may have a different way of viewing it and may show different information. But to take that different information and then put it into the staff report, it seems kind of hairy to me there. And it's like you said, it's a definite tightrope where you're walking there. But, I don't want you all to start.
I specifically asked Melissa about that when we met earlier in the week. Would this get us in trouble from a legal standpoint when these go to lawsuits? And I think the counterbalance or the counterargument to that is staff is ultimately saying we looked at these things, but they weren't compelling, and this is why, and it ultimately supports the conclusion that we came up with. I would defer to Tracy on maybe some sample reports before they get in front of the public. Maybe we go closed door with him from a staff and Tracy perspective and say, what do we think? Right. But I think ultimately it made lawsuit-proof staff's findings by doing it that way.
I got you. Yeah, it makes sense the way you said it there. So I get what you're saying now. All right.
I'm thinking of an example that we had down in South Tampa, where it was in the coastal high hazard area, and staff weighed the coastal high hazard policies, which we usually are very conservative in that because it's a life safety issue. But like on that one, staff in the report discussed the impacts of the industrial, if it was developed down there, feeding through the neighborhood. So we got into that argument of, even though it's a life safety issue and things like that, here's where it also is a life safety issue with trucks potentially going through a residential neighborhood. So like that, and I think there's been other examples too of where, especially in regards to the coastal high hazard area, where we've had to explain where both sides on the issue. So we can.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I guess just because we're talking about this topic, I'm usually the one who sort of does the flood checks on my computer live. And about 2 years ago, I think I made enough of a deal about it where they were making it into the staff reports, and now they've disappeared again. And I just think we show the coastal high hazard area, which is a Florida state layer, for information, and I know that's part of policy. But I just think adding an image of the flood zone just for our discussion would still help. I say it every year, and I don't think it's really much has to be written. It's one slide, it's one map. But today's presentation was a perfect example with 100% of a property being in a flood zone. I just think that's information we should have.
Yeah, and it should be included on the front page of the summary for any map change. So this is where those text amendments that apply to just a single property, probably it did not pop up. But yeah, we can talk with Melissa Leinhardt about including it for those that, but typically on the map amendments, there is now a field for that.
Yeah,
So,
and I see it at the top, sometimes listed there, but
Yeah.
I was,
want the
proud
map.
for a minute there. We were showing maps for a couple months, and then they sort of disappeared, so.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Loud?
I think those are probably the top two topics to discuss when we go offline and have a board, are the coastal high hazard area and the flood zone. And flood zone maps change periodically. Is it in our purview to consider those? Should we consider those as another agency down the road going to ensure that through the building or planning or zoning process? How much input should they even have? I think we all have different opinions on that. So I think it would be informative for us to hear from maybe Tracy from a legal perspective. We all the time, hey, you can't consider what's going to be zoned in this property. Ultimately, it's about the long-term land use. How does that apply to flood zones? Those change all the time. So I think it would be interesting to have that conversation from a board perspective, because at the end of the day, if I'm wrong, then maybe I value that piece of information as much as my colleague here. And right now, I kind of just toss it to the side and trust other agencies to look at it. So I think it would be worth having that conversation when we close the door.
Right. And I just want to correct that we don't close the door. It would be in like our, retreat meeting
That's
or
what I'm
something
saying.
that's publicly noticed so that we could all put our input in on the record, just to clarify.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, that's a good one.
All right. Were there any other? Commissioner Kress?
And David, you asked the question about the balance. You asked the question about the balance of what's in this backup and staff report and what's in the presentation. I'd say for the most part, you do pull out the highlights. The one thing that I think might be helpful, and I know we can dig through and find it, is the agency review and the comments, especially if they're substantive in some way. Because we're typically gonna, if there's a rep there from the government, we're gonna call them up and ask them to kind of tell us a little bit more about it anyway, so.
David again. The current direction that we have is to highlight if there's a concern from an agency, we highlight that in the presentation. Sometimes if there's none of the agencies have any concerns, we typically don't create a slide, just because we don't want to be in a position of inaccurately summarizing their finding, so.
I would just also mention that the city of Tampa is very diligent about being here at all of their hearings. They can't tonight. Evan had a personal issue arise, but he let me know that he couldn't be here. And I think Plant City has come to most of the hearings. If that is the desire, it is not something that is required of them to do, because they've provided their comments in writing. But it does seem like it's awfully helpful when they are here, and that's something I could communicate to the county and Temple Terrace, if that is something you all would that is your preference to have them here to explain sort of their comments.
Commissioner Lauk.
The commission has changed, but 2 meetings ago where we had our, help me out with the nomenclature, what is it when we don't close the door?
Our retreat meeting?
A retreat.
Or?
2 iterations ago when we had our retreat meeting, that was the wish of this body, that they show up. Now, I'm inclined to sometimes,
Well, and we did,
especially when there's differences in opinion between the 2 staffs.
Yes. We did, at that retreat, require that applicants have to be in person. And so when the local government is the applicant, 100%, we are asking them to be here. But when they are just a reviewing agency, such as the county staff will be on all of these amendments you just heard, I can make a request for them to attend, but they are not the applicant on those, so they are not required by your bylaws in the same way.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments, direction? Commissioner Conan?
Yeah. I guess to answer the question, I don't think the presentations need to be longer. I do think that it would be good to have, because there's very few times, and it's really on the inconsistent ones that really we challenge. Sometimes if there's, I would say if we were prepared with some language on the back end, either in the presentation or something handy that we had in our packet, that would be helpful.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then Tracy, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to clarify for the record the euphemism of a closed door workshop
please.
is not. I don't want that to be misunderstood. All of the Planning Commission's workshops are open to the public to attend. And although you might not specifically invite city staff or county staff, because the purpose is really for our board to have the discussion, I just want to make sure that the public's fully aware that we're in compliance with the Sunshine Law and public meetings law requirements.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that clarification. I agree wholeheartedly.
All
right. Are there any other comments, questions from the commissioners? No? That's okay. Go ahead.
I have another topic to throw out there then. It became an issue in one of the items last month at that the existing land use map that is part of the future land use series of maps that is provided in your packet for public hearings. It wasn't in there today, or no, it was in there for them today, wasn't it? Yeah. Is not very accurate. It was the one on 579 and Pruitt Road where a lot of the things were popping up as either industrial or as agricultural. They weren't, it wasn't reflected in the future land use, except the agricultural ones, but the existing land use map wasn't necessarily categorizing those the same way the applicant did in their presentation, and that was an example of the pictures being a lot more meaningful than the map. The existing land use map is something that's derived from the property appraisers' data. They have hundreds of codes of how they code different land uses when they go out and assess them, and they are grouped into different categories. That we're thinking perhaps has its utility has kind of run its course. It came from a time when we didn't have Google Maps. We didn't have aerial photography that is as amazing as it is now, where you can go and just do a stand in front of the property and look at it, and that perhaps we're better served with additional photos or and again, staff's limitation is that we're only allowed so far on the property as a private property owner allows us. So the private property owner may get better pictures of their own property. But just one thought we had was that perhaps the existing land use map was not particularly useful and causing more confusion than it was benefit. So open to feedback on that one as well.
Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm well aware of it's the Department of Revenue
Yeah.
land use code system that every county in the state uses. There could be up to 10,000 different land uses, grouped from residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, crops, community-based and government-owned. If they're grouped the right way, I think they are very valuable maps. As someone who works in urban planning, I use those all the time to sort of identify properties, things of that nature. I think they are important maps, but I need one in front of me to sort of make a complete comment, whether they're confusing or not. But I'm in support of using them just because I do think it's valuable information.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I
one
think
approach would be for us to update how we categorize those uses. That would take some time, but it is an effort that probably has not been done in 20 years, how we lump them, and a lot of uses have changed. We did an effort a couple of years ago to look at some specific trending uses that we thought were being kind of miscategorized, but we have not looked at it in a comprehensive way.
Yeah, I'd echo what Commissioner Fernandez says. I'd obviously dig down into that level too, but I ran into what you were just talking about, all the different codes. The other day I was coding something and it kicked me back from the property appraiser and I saw that. I was like, oh, I'm not even dealing with this. I can only imagine what you all are dealing with. But on the other hand, that information is key to understanding. You know, for people like me and him, we can look at that map and understand what's going on the ground instantly. You know what I mean? So it's another tightrope. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've got one up now, and it is true, you know, in cartography, we have a certain rule. Once you're past about 8 colors, you lost somebody on a map, especially the general public. And we're looking at about 16 different colors here. So if I had to make any recommendation is you can probably group some of those residentials, especially, you know, if it's multifamily and then HOA property. They're actually very similar in color. That can be confusing. But I think just taking a heavy look at this, you can probably group these to just reduce the number of uses. For example, recreation, agricultural, natural are all very similar shades of blue, green. You know, I'm not sure that those have to be separated on this map for, you know, these reports, but I do think they're important. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions on this topic from the commissioners? Not seeing any.
Okay. The only other thing that I wanted to mention is that, as Melissa Leinhart mentioned, the county's future land use update is now in effect, so that completes the update of the county's comprehensive plan. We're working in putting it all in a really user-friendly format on the website, but we'll welcome your questions and inquiries about how things are different going forward. That's going to be something as we move through the next cycle of amendments that we just need to be cognizant of, is that there are going to be some that are still in a process that is governed by the old plan, and then some that are moving forward under the new plan. So that's just something that we're going to have to work through, and we will try to be very clear in labeling which ones typically, and Mr. Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, we have handled it that we review the plan amendments based on the plan in effect at the time that they file their amendment, to protect them from if there were any changes that might have adversely impacted them. But that means as things continue and are moving from different cycles, we may have some that are before you at the same hearing with different plans that are governing them. So just wanted to alert you all to that, and staff is here to help in any way we can through that.
Okay. I had 2 questions. One, because I remember when it started, but not precisely the date. How long ago, and congratulations on getting that comp plan update. This has been an act of attrition. I remember being naive at the start of it and going, oh yeah, I get to preside over the updating of the comp plan, and it just turned into madness. So when did we start that process?
So I think, we started it this time in earnest, I think in 2018. The One Water section was adopted, I believe, during COVID.
Yeah.
And so that would have been 2020. That was the first section to be updated. So in terms of the hearings in front of you all, it would have been over the last 4 years.
Wow, that was nightmare. But anyway, good
Yes.
job. Great to
Thank
get
you.
it done. My next question is, when is it got to be updated again? When's the next one?
Well, the state no longer requires
Okay.
an update. The best practice is to update your plan every 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
And as I think I've said in many forums with you all, I don't think we should be waiting, though, for some big update. If there are issues that we're identifying, we should be bringing them forward and making the changes.
Okay. Very good. Commissioner Lau.
Slightly separate topic, or are we done with that?
Yeah.
So when I heard state requirements, it rang a bell in my brain. Last year, after hurricane season, there were provisions issued by the legislature that froze any changes to building codes and zoning plans coming from the state and a lot of specific jurisdictions. Did anything like that come down that may impact our work?
Not yet, but the legislative session won't start until, March. Thank you. And so we'll be monitoring that and see if there are any provisions like that. Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions or comments for our executive director?
That concludes my presentation.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. Yeah.
David looked up the plan amendment for us.
2408, right?
Yeah, 2408, yes. Oh,
I don't know, does it work?
I'm going to try and show you the map.
We'll try.
It's one of the ones,
I think it was one of the ones where the person had a single-family home, wanted to put the duplex in Seminole
Yeah.
Heights area.
Yeah, it's in the Tampa Heights area. It's,
The white is all R10, which is not white on this map, but
yeah, and it was one of the missing middle applications.
Okay.
It's right,
That was like a 7-3 vote. I think I'm remembering this.
yeah,
one.
it was a split vote, and this one is west of Florida. Oh, there you go.
I recall this now. The thought process was maybe send a message to say we think this area is ripe for this.
So apparently, the city council thinks it's right for missing middle housing, so that's good to know.
All right. All right. So now we will move on to our next agenda item, which is other business, chair's business. I have none. Old business, I don't believe there is any. Does anyone, do you have new business? Or?
Yeah, just had some conversation thinking about putting up my position on the Affordable Housing Board
Okay.
to Commissioner Sieben.
Okay. Is that,
So I'd like to accept the position for the Affordable Housing Board. I don't know that I can do both that and the River Board. I don't know if someone else might be interested in participating in the River Board at this time. But I do think I could be helpful on the Affordable Housing Board.
okay, any interest in Commissioner Lauk?
When does the River Board meet? It's always the number one question.
Yeah, I believe it's on Tuesdays, once a month.
At 11:30 in the morning, it's, I think, the fourth or third Tuesday.
Let me check this calendar.
1 month, it looks like it's third. Yeah, I think it's the third Tuesday.
Yeah,
And it's in this building?
it is. It's right across the hall.
And
Average
actually, I
length of
take
time?
that back, the TAC is at 1:30 in the afternoon.
1:30 on Tuesdays.
Okay, thanks for that intel.
All right, still back to any interest in anyone serving on the River Board as opposed to her? All right. Well, if there's none, what do we do in that point? I guess I got to make someone do it, don't I, Tracy? Because I get to choose. So, all right, I'm okay with you giving up the River Board and taking the Affordable Board. So we'll stick you on the Affordable Board, and now I get to choose who I want to for the River Board. Oh boy, everybody's eyes just went down. I just see a bunch of eyes go down around here. All right. Well, my thought is to just make you do it, Commissioner Lauk, because you asked about it. So, unfortunately, I mean, does anybody, I'll put it out there one more time for volunteers, if anybody wants to.
Attendance will be very sparse. You know that
Well,
going in if you nominate.
Yeah, I figure, but it's obviously going to be sparse with everyone else. No one's really raising their hand. So, and some Commissioner Kress?
I could be his alternate.
That we don't really have alternates for the river board, but could I make one? God, it's my purview.
Yeah, you
So
can
yeah, all
make
right,
one.
well, both of you guys
You can
then.
make
Commissioner
one.
Lau and first, and then Commissioner Crest is the alternate. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's that for new business.
I had one just announcement.
yeah.
Melissa mentioned Missing Middle, and I just wanted to alert you all that this Friday, there's a tour in the Hyde Park area that's focused on missing middle housing. If anyone's interested, it's in the afternoon. It's being put on by the Congress for New Urbanism and the group YIMBY. So I can get you more details if you're interested.
All right. Well, good opportunities. Commissioner Seaman, did you have, or is your mic just on?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Nothing to say. All right. Any more new business from anyone? Not seeing any, then I will go to committee reports. I guess the Transportation Board did meet, but we didn't really do much. They just had a bunch of presentations. We didn't take any action on anything, so not much going on there. Anyone have any other committee reports? Not seeing any, then we will move on to our last item of business, which is adjournment. And what time is our public hearing start? Plant City?
Public hearing starts at 5:30.
Okay.
But the Public Information Committee will get their dinner and come in the Planned Hillsborough room.
Right after this. Okay. So we will be back at 5:30 with public hearings, and at 4:05, this regular meeting is adjourned.